Tonight is online. He's been with us before, so he kind of knows how the technology works, and there he is. So welcome again, sir, and look forward to your presentation. Take it away.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship and assembled councillors, for having me to this meeting here to make a verbal presentation seeking support from the City of Brandon to establish a small white lady slipper urban ecological preserve. Just further by way of introduction, Kevin Tonick, I'm the Regional Vice President for Nature Conservancy Canada. Nature Conservancy Canada is Canada's leading charitable conservation organization. We're a well-governed, top-rated environmental charity that works in partnerships with all levels of government, foundations, industry, and private individuals that share our interest. Nature Conservancy Canada works to conserve important natural areas and biodiversity across all regions of Canada. Nature Conservancy has been active in Manitoba for nearly 50 years now and has conserved over 175,000 acres over 200 conservation projects across the province. NCC achieves success through science, securement, stewardship, and engagement with the public. Nature Conservancy Canada has been working with the current landowners of our property in the City of Brandon to create a Brandon Lady Slipper urban ecological preserve. Small white lady slippers are a protected orchid, protected both federally and provincially, and there is a population of them here within the City of Brandon. This proposed ecological preserve has the vision that the small white lady slipper population, located at the southwest of 121019, represents a source of community pride in Brandon, Manitoba. The small white lady slipper population and the mixed grass prairie ecosystem that comprises their habitat remain a viable and resilient ecosystem, and that the local community take pride in contributing to their recovery and protection. The site at the southeast corner of Brandon currently has some proposed residential developments associated with it. Our project has two elements. First, to establish a protected area of land to conserve the small white lady slippers and the native prairie ecosystem that supports it. And secondly, resourcing to support long-term stewardship activities that will be required to ensure the success of this preserve and the continued persistence of the small white lady slippers. The city owns title to 2.06 acres adjacent to the proposed preserve. As well, there are right-of-ways adjacent to this preserve, totaling approximately 2.8 acres in size. These properties contain elements which are important to support the small white lady slipper population and the native prairie ecosystem that supports them. Nature Conservancy Canada has proposed a stewardship program which contains the following elements: a hydrologic study and restoration. There is evidence that the hydrology that supports these orchids has been previously impacted, and NCC would seek to establish a baseline that inform and guide monitoring, management, and mitigation activities to restore this hydrology and to determine feature and characteristics of the site and the groundwater supply to the orchid population. Secondly, a baseline inventory, which is an assessment of the current extent and condition of the population and natural areas around it, and where applicable, as well as cultural features, and document potential threats, changes to biodiversity targets, including the small white lady slipper population. A monitoring program to track several factors important to the success of the preserve and the management of the small white lady slippers. Active land management to maintain the disturbance regime and other ecological processes, and to prevent or abate additional threats such as invasive species. Public education outreach. Being located in an urban environment, Nature Conservancy sees the education, outreach, and engagement of neighboring residents and the City of Brandon community at large as an important aspect of maintaining support and the viability of the orchid population in the long term. Addressing knowledge gaps. These knowledge gaps would be designed to contribute to a better understanding of our current gaps in knowledge and research, and also being critical to the ongoing success of the preserve. The request to the city is a contribution of 2.06 acres of titled land that are in association with the preserve, a commitment to support the project financially to the tune of $250,000, and following potential closures of the road allowances, that those road allowances be conveyed to Nature Conservancy, a part of this preserve. These contributions are anticipated to be matched by other levels of government and private contributions, with the total project budget estimated at $3 million. NCC considers this to be a significant opportunity to leverage the city's investment into a project with high public value and helps establish Brandon, Manitoba as a place that values the environment and the
tonight, and we'll open up the floor to questions. Again, you always make a very thorough presentation, and tonight was no exception. So I will open the floor if any member of council has questions. I'm trying to keep tabs here. I see a hand up. I'm trying to see who it is. There it is. Sorry, Councillor Cullen, then Councillor Chaboy. You're muted, Councillor Cullen.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to your presenter, Kevin. I know that when we talked before, I was kind of interested in sort of having you sort of tell us what this would look like. I had asked some questions about as far as how you were going to sort of keep the lady slippers protected, but at the same time having it so that within an urban area where we could use it as an attraction or something that an educational piece. So maybe you could sort of touch base on that as far as fencing or any of those type of elements that might be involved.
Right. So Nature Conservancy Canada, typically when we operate our properties, the vast majority of them are open to the public. There is signage at the levels of development of them vary. Nature Conservancy does operate a couple of projects in or close to kind of urban towns and urban areas. So we operate a property in the middle of Stonewall, Manitoba, which has, I said, a series of low impact trails and interpretive signage throughout that property. The design of the access is going to be a project that will be done with the city, kind of in collaboration through the planning process. But NCC's intent is that it will operate as private land. However, it will be open to the public. We would intend that there be a low impact trail system on that. And I guess the efforts or the threats that high use, the potential of high use might represent, that is where NCC really does see the value of education and outreach with the community, that the community understands and respects. The hope is they would have access to. It does contain orchids. It will be made aware of the sensitive times for those orchids through NCC's outreach and communication. And it happens many times, NCC is convinced that without the support, understanding, and cooperation of local residents, conservation gets very difficult. So that is just points, I guess, to the importance that NCC places on its ability to communicate and educate the public. But our intent is, again, that the property would be open. There's a long history of use. That site and the orchids that reside there have had the attention, the loving attention of concerned area citizens for decades now. And NCC would hope that continues, and that community that has supported those orchids in the past continues to do so in the future.
Just to follow up, Kevin, I know that you had mentioned in your presentation you were planning to do an inventory and an assessment, but could you kind of give us an idea, just a rough idea? I know that I won't hold you to this, as far as like how many plants or how many orchid plants are we talking about right now that are in that area?
Councillor, I wouldn't have the exact number. of individual orchids that are on the site. We do have the design, NCC's, Nature Conservancy's negotiations with the landowners have meant to kind of protect all of the orchids that have been observed on that parcel for a number of years. So I could certainly come back and let you know, but there would be several hundred individuals occurring throughout the property. And of course, orchids, they're an interesting organism. You know, sometimes they remain dormant underground. Sometimes they come to the surface and they're vegetative, so they just have leaves. And our typical monitoring of orchid populations is really flowering stem count, so we only count them when they have the flowers. The exact, the proxy, you know, for the numbers of individuals that those flowering plants in any one year recognizes is a bit of an estimate. So while we understand the area that the orchids have historically been populating, our proposal includes a buffer around those to include the ones that perhaps were missed, and to include some of the native prairie. But the exact number I don't know, but it would be several hundreds of orchids.
Great. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Thank you, and Councillor Chavoyer.
Thank you, Worship, through to the presenter. Kevin, I want to thank you and your organization for the commitment to preserving this endangered species. One question that's been raised to me from constituents and other people that are concerned about the orchids is your organization going to ensure that you follow all the federal rules and guidelines to ensure that this endangered species is protected? I think that's an important requirement because if we're going to enter into this partnership to preserve something that is nationally important to the country, we want to ensure that we're doing it correctly.
Yes. So Nature Conservancy Canada has a history of assuming this responsibility of owning land with endangered species. It's our business. Nature Conservancy Canada operates in southeastern Manitoba, you know, where we own 22,000 acres of land. A significant amount of that land is populated by several different endangered species, at least two of them, being orchids, the western prairie fringed orchid and the small white lady slipper. In that landscape, as we would here, we work in collaboration and in communication with both our federal and provincial partners in conservation, and we collaborate with them, and we, NCC, operates in a way that's consistent with all levels of regulation. In fact, the proposal for the establishment of this preserve and the supporting stewardship activities, we have circulated and communicated its contents to both and received comments from both levels of government, and we've incorporated the questions that they have had into our plan and provided that to them again. And furthermore, as we do in other locations where we are managing properties for multiple species at risk, we anticipate that on an ongoing basis we would be receiving input and cooperation by both our federal and provincial departments responsible for regulations that affect them. So absolutely, and it's something that we have a history of doing.
Thank you. Another question that I have for you is do you have a commitment to educate the public on this? Because if you're talking about an urban green space here where the public could possibly have access to the property, how are you going to ensure that, you know, we're educating them about how important it is to preserve this plant, but also to respect the space?
Yes, exactly, Councillor, and that is what our education outreach activities will be targeted. Not only providing information and educating them, but engaging the local population, engaging them by offering them a program where they can get involved in species at risk conservation. Part of the realization is that small white lady slippers, that orchid, it is supported by a number of ecological services provided by the ecosystem that surrounds it. Pollinator services, for example. NCC, would be endeavoring to engage with the local community, having partnerships and partnership projects with groups like Bee City Brandon to work with them to encourage people to have pollinator-friendly gardens, encouraging the city and those neighbors to engage in pollinator-friendly practices, working through citizen science, working with engaged stakeholders to help NCC conduct some of those monitoring and some of those land stewardship activities. So NCCC's efforts are and intentions are more than just conveying information. It's that we want to offer the citizens an opportunity to actively get engaged in conservation, both in situ, so on the site, but also in their own backyards and in their own neighborhoods.
Thank you. Thank you for your commitment to looking after this piece of property, and also it will be challenging when we're facing further changes with climate change. So, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got Councillor Cameron now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter. Once again, I echo Councillor Chaboy's statement there in thanking you for the presentation. I was wondering, is there a commitment with Nature Conservancy Canada or in how you approach maybe sort of programming partnerships? I know you mentioned a number of partnerships with like Bee City Brandon. I'm thinking with regards to, Brandon houses 2 post-secondary institutions in Assiniboine Community College and Brandon University. Is there programs and partnership ability in working with either the horticultural department at ACC or the botany department at Brandon University, or even for that matter, Brandon School Division, in allowing sort of them to be champions on the stewardship as well? I'm just wondering how those partnerships work throughout the country for Nature Conservancy Canada and other post-secondary institutions. Thank you.
Absolutely. We have had actually a partnership with Assiniboine Community College, their Land and Water program, where they have been invited and have came out to NCC, Nature Conservancy Canada properties in the area to do projects and work with NCC on doing inventory work and active management and monitoring that management. We've partnered with Brandon University in the past. In fact, have a pretty close relationship with one of their professors, who is now a member of Nature Conservancy Science Advisory Committee. So looking to use that connection to get master's students out there doing projects on dealing with some of these knowledge gaps, and through our outreach programming, building on the ongoing engagement with middle and secondary schools. Nature Conservancy Canada has a well-developed curriculum-based education programming where pre-COVID we would go into schools and deliver educational content that's curriculum-based around focusing on biodiversity conservation. Actually, since last March, when COVID put an end to that, many of those resources have been put online. But hopefully, coming into the other end of this COVID, we certainly do hope to get back to engaging all levels of academia, local community groups, and local educational institutions in citizen science activities, helping NCC address some of those knowledge gaps and do some of that monitoring and those stewardship activities that are so critical to maintain the small white lady slippers.
Thank you so much. I think there's a tremendous opportunity with this being an active learning space. So I commend your group for that work and look forward to this opportunity, should council support for the city of Brandon and the region as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up at the moment, and just give council a second if there are other questions, but it's been fairly well covered. Okay, not seeing any. Motion to receive would be in order. Councillor Chaboy.
Thank you, Worship. I move that the presentation by Kevin Teneke on behalf of the Nature Conservancy Canada with respect to a request for a contribution by the City of Brandon to the establishment of a Lady Slipper Urban Ecological Preserve be received, and that the matter of the financial contribution be deferred to the 2021 budget deliberations for discussion.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Cameron. Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Kevin. Excellent presentation, and we look forward to additional. We do have a committee of the whole report shortly on our agenda, almost next, and